Hey everyone, today I want to talk about dynamic sketching. This is a topic that is very, very dear to me. I've studied this a lot throughout the years, and I really want to dive deeper into my journey, my learnings, my mistakes, and a lot of references, dive deeper into the structure of courses and all of that. There's no better way to start than looking at Norman Schureman. Norman was actually a teacher that passed away tragically a few years back. He's the first person I can trace back to that used the term like dynamic sketching or visual communication. He was a teacher at Art Center College of Design. And then later, Peter Hahn studied probably with him, I'm not sure, but continued his teachings there and at CGMA, a lot of other places, and the term dynamic sketching and Viscom and so on really spread out. You can see that his work over here really looks like a lot of the stuff we've seen around the internet on dynamic sketching. So we can really trace back to him. I love the title of this sketchbook from him. To draw is to see. I have discussed this a lot in other videos here on the channel as well. If you want to support his work, his legacy, as well as his family, I'll have a link in the description to this sketchbook so you can buy it. I would love to have one as well, but it's great to see a little bit of it here and there on the internet. So what we're going to cover here today, as I said, we're going to go through the structure of a lot of different courses and find similarities and some differences here and there. Looking at references, especially from artists, how to choose them and how they will affect your journey along the way. Some of the tools, but especially to find your own pace. A lot of people tend to focus on going too fast, or others staying too long in one specific topic like line quality and so on. I want to touch a little bit on that. Moving forward, I think this is the beginning of the drawing journey, can be like understood as a beginning of the drawing journey, but there is a lot to build on top of that, especially on the gesture side, and I'll talk a lot about that. And references in the community as always. So I would love to hear from you. Have you studied dynamic sketching to this point? What were your experiences? How you enjoyed it? What worked best? And so on. So I want to start with these two courses. They are from CG Master Academy, so CGMA. And they are the beginning from like my understanding of dynamic sketching and my experience of dynamic sketching, where it began to really spread out from like the art centers and all those California-based design schools to the rest of the world. This is an online course. It was taught by Peter Hahn in the beginning, and then a lot of teachers continued. So I want to really dive deeper into the structure and use that as a basis for everything that we're going to talk here today. Dynamic Sketching 1, and I took Dynamic Sketching 1 back in the day with Peter Hahn, and I got to be honest here, I feel the pace was a little slower than I expected. So that's why I want to look at both those courses combined. At that time, they only had Dynamic Sketching 1, and then it grew to Dynamic Sketching 2, if I'm not mistaken. But it starts with a lot of line work and building up textures and understanding curves and drawing over and over again. Perspective, a basic look at perspective, organic forms, then looking a little bit of more on value and the structure for lighting, so you understand form from a point of view of casting shadows and so on, as well as going deeper into textures, creating depth and volume. So combining a lot of those primitives, you can definitely like pause the video and go through the reading the content. Drawing from observation, this is the first time we get to specific topics, specific things from around us. So going to the arboretum and drawing, there are some videos around the internet from Peter Hahn and from other people drawing vegetation and so on. This is really important. This is a very important point. And using everything that you learn to redesign, to create an original landscape art with vegetation and rocks and different composition, and talking a little broader into that topic. Then it goes into dynamic sketching 2. So starting with a brief recap, then insects, bones. You've probably seen a lot of examples from this type of drawings. FZD also does a lot of insect and a little bit of the bones. So design, once again, using all the information, doing a little bit studies. This is the VisCom, visual communication aspects of it. So using all the structure that you understood and applying that to something. Hard surface with cars, military vehicles, and planes. A lot of drawing outside on this one as well. There are great videos by Scott Robertson going to the Smithsonian Museum of Aircraft and so on. So you can find a lot of resources on the internet. I'll try and link all that I can find here in the description below. So going forward, I want to take a look at some other structures so that we begin to understand that it's almost the same over and over again. So you have an understanding of what they're looking for and how to use it. And then we'll go back to the original one and really dive deeper into the examples. So materials, once again, and technique, line quality, and so on. Manipulating the primitives as well as organic and geometry shapes to put them together and create a complex form. Marine animals. So this doesn't have in what we've seen at CGMA, but it's a little bit of the organic transformation. We'll see other examples later on, but the vegetation and simple plants and tree trunks, you can find a lot of that. Then it goes into the skeleton and insects that we've seen, land animals. Feng Zhu talks a lot about this in his video, Just Draw. I'm going to add it to the description as well. That jumping to something that is less recognizable is easier in the beginning. So a Rhino, you have a lot of room for mistakes when you're building up stuff, and then you go more and more complex and more relatable to different topics. Birds will get even more complicated. I think that's why New Masters Academy puts, and this is by Charles Hu, puts vegetation here because trees are going to follow into this category. So they're going to be way harder and way more relatable than like simple plants and bushes that you are going to find around like your house or the garden and so on. Costume figures, so getting way more complicated. A lot of them don't go as far as figures, and we're going to talk about that later on. And cars, hard surface stuff, planes, going back to CGMA, we've seen this before. If we jump to Brainstorm School, I'll have a link to Brainstorm in the description as well. You have 2 courses, 2 different teachers, 2 different structures. So Charles Lim, basic fundamentals, so line, control, and visualizing form and form construction with primitives. So the difference between shape and form and understanding 2D versus 3D, adding contours. So really breaking that down. We've seen that in the foundation on the video on perspective for concept art that I did. Modern Day James goes a lot into breaking down simple primitives into complex form. Texture, once again, going into and getting more and more complex. So building with all those primitives and all those transformations that we did on top of them, addressing form versus shape, and probably using a lot of different examples that he doesn't mention here. And now it goes very specific with getting from the big to the small and using point of interest, composition, texture density, and so on to really create readability. And then, in my opinion, it goes a little bit on a tangent here, going broader and broader into like action sequences and narrative sequencing. Michael Hampton, on the other hand, is very close to the structure we've seen so far. So basic, the mechanics of drawing lines, curves, planes, ellipses, organic forms, and all that we tend to relate to dynamic sketching. The basic form constructions and transformations. So modifications here expanded into week 3. Organic forms, so plants and textures and point of interest, texture density, and guiding the eye and all of that. Principles of lighting, so casting a little bit of shadows, different lighting conditions, and so on. Aquatic or marine life, as we've seen with New Masters Academy, another great addition here, in my opinion. I have a video on drawing fish as well. I learned a lot from that, and we're going to talk about that here today. Insects, hard surface, and animals going more and more complex and more relatable. If we look at foundation group, I have a video on drawing for concept art and perspective for concept art, discussing a lot of this, but they have very specific videos that I think go into the topic of dynamic sketching. So the two basic ones will go over combining simple forms, transforming, and getting to this hard surface structures that are not as relatable. They are a little bit on the creative license aspect, so you can go crazy and not follow something that really exists in the world. So you can practice your perspective and construction. Even using FZD tends to go and use a tractor. We're going to see a little bit of those examples later on. Shading, so a little bit of the lighting situations that we've seen before. Organic construction, marine animals, so 2 interesting tutorials on this. Insects and bones, land animals, as we've seen before, going more complex and studying more of those animals and breaking down their structure. Getting more and more relatable, as we were talking before. Hard surface, so vehicles and animals with casting shadows. Going deeper into casting shadows using the brush pen. These are tutorials by John Park, really good. Structure of architecture, something that I really feel that we should add to dynamic sketching, and we don't go that route. I don't know why. I would love to hear more. But foundation does go into that here with dynamic sketching and architecture and theme parks. So getting more and more creative. And then you can even light your environments. So I think this is a great structure. You see that I'll go back to that. These are super affordable tutorials. So you can get started and you can get really going. These are 20 tutorials. Then you can have for a quarter of what a course would cost you and really go a long way just following these. And finally, some of the references, I mentioned some of them before, but look up these people. So Andrew Cano teaches at CDA, Concept Design Academy, or used to teach. So you can find some of his work and really dive deeper. Norm Schureman, Charles Hu, Sori Kim. She has a tutorial on Domestica. I'll have a link in the description as well. All the courses at Brainstorm, we saw Charles Lin and Michael Hampton as well. And here, Peter Hahn and Patrick Ballesteros from back in the day at CDA, Concept Design Academy. I do believe Patrick is still teaching. I don't know on which platform. And we also have Charles Hu at New Masters Academy. And I think he has some of them at Gnomon Workshop as well. I'll have all links, everything I remember will be in the description. But please do share what are your favorite resources. What have you learned the most? And we can definitely learn from those. So let's jump on some really actionable stuff and reinforce all that we have discussed so far. So starting with the techniques and draftsmanship, here are some of the examples of materials I use. So the Staedtler pigment liner, a lot of those courses tend to recommend those as well, and some tone paper. So I love this Strathmore, but you can find a lot of different resources from this. I'll have links in the description for some options as well. So this is where you start doing a lot of this line work and really getting better and better. This is the beginning of the work I did. I did a lot of this, so you can see practicing and really like lightly and just talking to people and doing this kind of stuff and getting better and better at that. You don't need to be great. You can see a lot of the work done here is not that good, but it's practicing. You get better and better throughout the time. You can see a little bit of the texture studies here as well, and a little bit of the organic shapes that we're going to be talking later on, and 5 basic primitive sources. So combining a lot of the stuff in the warm-ups and doing them over and over again will teach you more of your perception of ellipses and placement of perspective, but also really going deeper and deeper into your craft. I love a book by Marcos Matteo Mestri on this topic, frame drawing techniques. I think this is one of the best out there in helping with the draftsmanship. So a great addition here, going direct on pen. If you're using pencil, that is a little more permissive as well. I think it will be interesting. Some people don't like it because you need to commit when you're going with pen. But if you're having a very hard time, I would consider going pencil first and really building your way to the pen and having more of that confidence. You can compare yourself too much at this early stage. If you look at the stuff that we're seeing here with what we've just seen from my old work, it's crazy the difference, and you can feel really frustrated really quickly. That's why I really encourage doing some pencil work as well, so that you can make correction and so on. Jumping the next topic, as we've seen before, is perspective. So a lot of different exercises can be done in here. I've talked extensively about this on my video on perspective for concept art. You definitely should check that out. It goes deeper into grids and all of that. But even standalone stuff, you can do a lot of exercises trying to place boxes in perspective and getting more and more complicated. So building different shapes out of bricks and those simple structures. A tractor, as we've talked before, this is used as an example at FZD. And it's really useful to visualize simple form construction. You can really simplify the tires to boxes, and it will really work in this beginning. And here some more examples. But this is where you can see a lot of my mistakes from doing this without any kind of reference and even without the horizon line. So you can see the points here. I tried a little bit tracing back to see where they went. You can see a little bit of the mistakes, more of a fisheye structure. And we discussed this on the video on perspective. If we had a horizon line here that had 2 vanishing points that are so close to each other, we would definitely have something that starts curving. So actually curving way more intense than this. We've seen that on Kim Jung-gi's work and so on. So be really careful about this. And this is where I want to suggest a different approach from what we've seen in Drawbox, the 200 boxes challenge, 200 cylinders, and all of that, using sketchfab as a basis for your 3-dimensional drawing. And you can definitely find that a little weird, but I really want to dive deeper here. This is a 3D art selling platform and showcasing platform. but you can really learn a lot from it. So if you go here on the search and just search for boxes, for example, we'll find some examples of boxes in the 3D space. Then we can definitely use that to draw them from different directions. And you see that the horizon line, the conversion to the horizon line is going in that direction as well as that direction. If you go farther away, you have less distortion, and we really discuss grids and distortion in my video on perspective for concept art. Here you can see almost like a one-point situation. You can even move that around a bit, so you have a different viewpoint, a different perspective. You can see them even from below, so the horizon line will be lower. And you can really use this as a basis for drawing boxes, drawing the 300, 250 challenge that you have. Something else you could use are dice. So even the ellipses on the surface can be really useful. So you find the minor axes of the ellipses, if you know what I mean. If you've seen this before, you can really find those minor axes in 3 points, in 2-point situation, go further away. More example of dice on top of a table, so you can see how they project the shadow as well. And here, more shadow projection in different directions, far away. You can move them to the edge of your picture plane and so on. So really, really useful. We're going to see that again with fish later on, but I wanted to go to a tractor as well. So I love this. You can draw it from different directions and really try and draw the same subject from different points of view, from close-ups to far away. It's really, really useful. Another simple version, very similar to what we saw in that drawing that I just showed. So really use this. Try doing like 5 of this in the same page in different directions. Do some of them from memory and see if you're getting that. So I drew from reference in this view, and now I want to do one from memory in this one and try and build all those kind of stuff, and then go back here and see if I got some of them right. And even like this direction from below, you can see it far away. So if it's in a hue or something like that and you are not seeing the bottom parts, you can definitely do that as well. So very, very good practice. So going back to our structure, the next topic is organic forms. So diving deeper into those constructions and now understanding a little bit of the lighting, that is going to be the next topic, but you can already understand the Terminator. I talked about this on my video on values, using color and light and how to render, to really understand form and how to project those shadows and so on. So really go there and look at this, learn more and more, so that you convey a lot with as little as possible. So you can see here, I didn't use a lot of different values. It's just the Terminator shadow, a cast shadow, and some highlights. And the tone paper is great for doing this kind of highlights. And it's enough. Going on to textures once again. So really going deep into this. I was really, really lazy when I started doing this kind of thing. And just doing for the quantity and not understanding a little more what I was doing. But one after the other, I started getting my head around that. And once we get to vegetation, we really start understanding how useful this is in bringing the eye to the right point, having a great composition in your work. So the lighting aspects, once again, I want to highlight these amazing tutorials by the foundation group. So both these basic ones with 2 values as well as full value structure are really great, and they have a lot of other ones on this. I'll add a link to my video on the topic to the description as well. So some of my work using some Scott Robertson stuff to understand planes as well as primitives. I used a lot of marker here as well. I forgot to mention, but I was using a little bit of marker, but you can do that with graphite on top or even with hatching. A lot of examples from Marcos Mateo's mastery book, drawing techniques, will be really helpful to do this kind of stuff. And the two value ones are really, really hard. These are from a tutorial from John Park's Gumroad. I'll add the link to the description as well. But they are really, really interesting to wrap your head around the problem of using simplification to convey three-dimensionality in your work. So going back and getting more and more complex now, it's all about like connecting those primitive shapes. We talked about this before. These are some great tutorials, again, from the foundation group. A simple gun can be really useful to understand the cylinders and how light is falling on them, as well as very simple. The tractor will fall into this category here as well. So you can start understanding sizes, relationships, conversion in perspective, and so on. As I said before, FZD has some great examples on using this simplified primitives and building on top of that. I know I'm getting a little ahead of myself with some of the vehicles here, but I hope at this point you can definitely understand what I'm talking about and how to build on top of all of that to get to something like this. If we look at some of the work that I did, and we've seen this a little bit, something similar before. This is from Foundation Group, so connecting a lot of those simple shapes and extruding parts and transforming some of the parts, rounding out some of them using the basic principles from the organic shapes, and doing a lot of those exercises, a little bit of vegetation. So once again, ahead of myself to some extent, but starting to get more real from the textures. This is where the textures become really important and how you're using them and just like suggesting other parts. So more examples from this kind of concepts, going a little crazy sometimes and trying to get as far as you can and play with that a little bit and adding some of the details. So this is a little bit of a copy from what you can see on those tutorials. So I would highly recommend even doing different views. I think I went too close to the original views. If we go back to the source material here, you can see that it's too close, and I would do it from a different angle. I think it's going to be really helpful. And now observation, we go into vegetation and so on. So I think this is one of the best courses out there, Sketching Anything by Aaron Limonic. I really learned a lot from this, especially this demo and using a lot of the textures and value density, as well as form and form direction, ellipses, and so on to convey this three-dimensionality is really, really useful. And even for rocks, having a direction of what, here you can see it, having really this volumetric sensation to everything that you're drawing is really, really important. And it's hard. This is a failed attempt from back in the day. So some of the work that I did, and you definitely get better and better with time and start controlling a little more of the textures, values, where to put details and where to leave it, just as a suggestion. Even here with some rocks, the direction and three-dimensionality. I love this book by Sarah Simblett. Here is one of the best examples of this, how your eye is going here in this direction because of the texture density, the value density. It's really guiding your eye. So you're defining that this is the most important part. I know this is a tutorial, it's a drawing class on this topic, but it works really well as an example of a drawing. You don't need to render everything if you want to convey something specific. So if you were drawing this flower, you can do more design of the details and textures in here, and then your eye will just go up there. So going back to the structure, now I want to go to New Masters Academy because of drawing marine animals before we go into insects and back to the original part. I talked about this in another video here on the channel, drawing fish, so you should definitely see that. But here are some of the tutorials from the foundation group. I really learned a lot from this, and we're going to see some of the examples. They really go deep into this topic, and some of my work from that tutorial specifically. As you can see, I really tend to go more on the copy mode, and that was really detrimental to my learning process throughout the years. So I should have done this from a different angle so that I can understand how to do that on my own drawing and not just copy the solutions that they did. I definitely can do some copies to get a grasp of what they're doing and get better in my draftsmanship, but doing more from observation from different angles, for getting my own reference, and even drawing some from memory or imagination will really go a long way. So these are from other references I did later on, trying to really organize the readability, some birds, so getting ahead of ourselves. But this is important as well. Don't get caught in the idea that you need to master a topic so you can go to the next. If you want to draw a bird, go there, even like fail and then go back and back and forth, and having fun with this process. This is a really important part, having fun, just drawing. Being mindful is where you learn, but having fun is where you continue, where you persist. So this is why sometimes going to other topics, it's great. And here are some newer examples, also adding a little bit more amphibians and going that route, getting a little closer to what the insects will be with symmetry. So you have more symmetry in here, and a little bit reptiles here with snakes. That is also another topic that I did a video here on the channel. So going into fish, and we can get back in this moment to gathering reference, I tended to go with static reference, as I don't have like an aquarium or something like that to go to. I relied too much on that source material. It's great for practicing draftsmanship and composition, driving the eye, textures, where you're going to put them and where not. So there's a lot to learn from this. But this is where I want to go back to sketchfab. And here you can see we even have some animation. You can see the fish from different angles, and you can even pause the animation if you want, or have a static pose. I don't like all the poses. They feel a little static, too static. So I prefer getting the animation going and pausing whenever I want, so I can really go around and look for different poses that look more alive. Other fish here. This is one of the drawings I did. You may recognize the textures and all of that. I think this is great. You can draw it multiple times. Sorry Kim did a lot of studies, and I comment on this on my video on snakes specifically, because this is more of a cylindrical being. So it's great to understand how to convey this organic form as well as organize those textures and readability. This is moving a lot, so you can have, once again, you can pause and find some poses and even go around with those poses and try drawing from memory in different orientations, from different perspectives, and get the reference to that perspective to see where you were right and what went wrong. You can even go really, really crazy. and have a lot of different fish. You can have one or more in the same composition and add them and look at all of them from different angles, and even some close up and other far away. And you can find a lot of different references here on Sketchfab. As the next topic we're going to be seeing is insects. It's also really interesting. Here, it's very hard to find great reference to draw from on insects. So this is where looking from different angles and understanding that symmetry and that perspective will really, really go a long way. And you can see this one. Some of them will have animations, some of them will not. And even spiders, there is a very good example on spiders. This one even animated, so you can find the right pose that you want. It's even nightmare inducing for some people that are like me. So really great. You can see from a lot of angles. You can see from up here. This is where I don't like this static pose because it almost like looks dead. Or even if you go to a natural history museum and you see the insects, they kind of tend to look like this. If you go back to the animation, you see that the pose changes a lot. So I would go with this and just pause that in something that looks great and draw from that. So this is nice. One leg is up. So I think this is a great approach to drawing this. You can even see the cast shadow here. You can definitely learn a lot from those references using some of the guidance here from Foundation Group. I love this one by Charles Lim, talking even about design and small, medium, and large shapes and how to organize them and how to look at some different insects and understand the breakdown of those shapes and how even on the design side, as we saw, the design directions that were given here. So using, so here, insects and bones and creating a design process. This is where you're gonna use a lot of those concepts and start building on top of that. So here, some of my examples, pretty rough. I haven't drawn from different directions the same species. And it would be awesome to use Sketchfab. I'll definitely go back to that now that I know that. I didn't have this info when I was studying this and starting out. The next topic is bones. And I'm really passionate about this one. If you've seen my video on art as a hobby, you will definitely know that. So a lot of examples here. First with the prehistoric bones and bones in general. Prehistoric ones, you will get more of a creative license as it's not that relatable. And when you get closer and closer even to the human figure and drawing skeleton, it's way less permissive and those mistakes will be really clear. It's the same if you draw a kangaroo and you draw a lion. The lion will be way harder because we don't see lions a lot of the time. Also, a rhino here, you can definitely draw them with a more permissive approach. If you see the eye here is in different positions and the ears related to the eye. So you have a little more room to make mistakes that. And drawing at the zoo is also great. I talk also about that on my video art as a hobby. So some of my work here, some examples drawing from life. This one from reference, of course, but a lot of them from natural history museums as well. I think those are from reference, trying to understand more of the form as a whole. I think this one might be from real life. And also some of the exercises I did for the foundation. So birds here, I won't go a lot into other animal stuff. So this is why birds are here as well. And you can see this one I talked about in the video of art as a hobby. I love this drawing. I love the whole environment it was done. So it's really great to use a lot of what we learned. Even some of the lines are following the volume here. And I'm trying to bring your eye here using the density of details as well as the values here, the line values and contrasts, trying to bring the eye here, and even leaving some things suggested instead of described, so you can really go here. It's a different approach. I'm using graphite, but the concepts are pretty much the same. There are lots of books on this topic. So Ken Hootgren is very famous. Joe Weatherly, one of my favorites. You have a whole course from him on New Masters Academy as well. And Tara Whitlatch, if you're building on top of bones and understanding muscles and all of that, this is the way to go. She also has courses on schoolism, so really great resource as well. And if you go back to sketchfab, you can also see here a model of a rhino, so you can draw from different directions and really look around sketchfab. You can find amazing, even bones, so anatomy, animal. You can definitely look around and find some great examples to draw from. I love these lions, and the same artist has also a horse. And you can support the artist as well, buying the models. If you want to really do that, it would be awesome. So more of an crochet approach. So you have the bones, you have the muscles, and you have the fully fleshed one. And you can draw from different angles and really learn from this. I would love to see a platform, to be honest, doing more of these and using this. I think New Masters Academy could really do that and have some of those models spread out, so you can add the layers and really understand that and use this as a drawing basis. They do have the 3D part, but it's too focused on primitive shapes as well as plaster casts and also the figure. But I would love to see more examples, and you can even go into architecture here as well. So house, and this is the next topic we're going to be talking about. Find something that looks more realistic. Some of them are going to be looking too cartoony here, and then you can go to like cartoon and distortion later on. But you can really find great reference, even this more cartoony stuff, for the theme park tutorial that we're going to be seeing in a bit. It's really, really useful. So it takes some time to load, but you get there. So great, you can draw from different angles. So awesome, awesome resource of study. The next topic that CGMA goes into is hard surface. So a lot of vehicles, and you have the same here with the foundation group. We saw this before very briefly, and now we can dive deeper into more and more complex. We saw that with FZD as well. So some of my work here from references all over the internet as well as from life. So this is really hard because from far away we can see the details, but if we get too close, it starts distorting a little bit of the perspective. So you can see a little bit of the distortion here. You can definitely find cars and tractors as we've seen on sketchfab and use them as a reference. As I mentioned before, CGMA doesn't go into architecture, but Foundation Group does. And even a lot of the other resources don't go into this, but I find it to be really important. So take your time. These are some of the tutorials that they have. I really like this one and this one as well. Some of my work on the topic, I really love drawing this architecture and details. I've discussed this on the Art as a Hobby video as well. And these are some of my favorite books on the topic. I really love this one specifically, as well as this one by Christian Schellwald. I'll have links to all of them in the description. As a final resource that I want to share on this topic, Peter Hunt's Dynamic Bible. I think this is a great book covering all these topics. Are very good notes on really understanding perspective, conversion, directions, combination of different primitives and so on. So some more pages and examples. He's really, really great with his draftsmanship. So I definitely recommend this. I said this before, but Marcos Mateo Mestre is also really great. So as a final topic I want to discuss is some extra materials and extra courses for us to go through, especially if you're going into more the figure drawing and animal drawing route. So some courses I collected from CGMA as well. And I really want to dive deeper on what's different about them. Here are the content descriptions, so you can definitely dive deeper later on and have a look at this and read through that step by step. But I really want to jump in and take a look. As you can see, solid drawing is just the beginning. After the instructor goes through a lot of the basic principles that are going to be covered throughout the whole course, it goes into three-dimensionality and construction, basics of construction. But after that, it expands. So exaggerating the gesture in the references are really good. So Walt Stanchfield as a basis for this one, and really understanding, and we've talked about this before, understanding weight distribution and how people stand up, sit down, how they distribute their emotions in the way they position themselves, and all of that. Connecting action, instruction through design. So Mark Davies and Mute Call as an example, advanced gesture and storytelling. So Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnson here. So you can see that the examples being used are really great. And some of the books I'm going to bring up in a bit. So the costume figure that was brought in New Masters Academy structure by Charles Hu, you can really go deeper in here and really have a lot of those influences and a lot of different understandings before going into it. Walt Stanchfield once again. So this is really great, being interested in what you're sketching. So master studies and final sketches here. A lot of the Disney masters, and specifically Heinrich Kley or Heinrich Kley. And that was the figure drawing one, but you can see that the dynamic animal sketching is almost the same. So you can see here using the principles of animation and structure to simplify and to create the illusion of three-dimensionality. So the construction of quadrupeds, exoskeletal structure, muscular. It's a little bit of what I described with Tara Whitlatch, a great resource on that topic. And then going into some of those amazing references, Mark Davis and Mute Call, sketching birds. So getting more and more complicated with the gesture and action. And finally, last but not least, once again, Heinrich Kley, one of the best drawers and draftsmanship in this direction out there. You can find in-depth discussions about the figure and animal drawing at New Masters Academy as well. So here, a great one by Carl Nass on gesture, as well as this anatomy course by Joe Weatherly. And last but not least, some book suggestions. So Drawn to Life by Walt Stanchfield, we saw his name come up. Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston, The Illusion of Life, Disney Animation. You have the Disney Animation books. So the Jungle Book with a lot of Mute Call stuff in there. I don't have this archive series, but I've heard good things about it. Frank Frazetta, also another great reference, and the drawings of Heinrich Kley. There is a video by Proco and Marshall Vandroof. I'll add a link to the description as well, where they go in depth into some of his sketchbooks that they got access to through Stuart Ning, if I'm not mistaken. This is a very specialized art book store in the US. So definitely check that out. I'll have links to all of that in the description. So this is it from me. I hope you found your way to the end of the journey here and understand a little better dynamic sketching. can hit the ground running, get some of the foundation group tutorials, or even join a course from CGMA, get an instructor from Brainstorm, or even a self-paced course with a subscription for New Masters Academy. Anyways, you can do it on your own, finding a lot of different resources online. Modern Day James has a great YouTube channel on the topic. A lot of those people that we're talking about, Sorry Kim has a Domestica course, a lot of different points where you can find knowledge. Just draw a lot, go back and forth, find the references you enjoy the most, have fun, and grow one step at a time. Find your own pace. So yeah, that's it from me. I really hope to catch up on other videos and you have a great studies journey. Please share in the comments how it went, some of the challenges, so that we can all learn together as a community. Have a great day.